that submersible, the Titan, the one that imploded last year, exploring the Titanic wreckage. Remember that? It was everywhere.
Yeah, tragic story.
Well, you sent us this CNN article, and it's about this recent Coast Guard hearing. Turns out there's, like, a whole lot more to it.
Oh, absolutely. This is, way beyond just a simple accident. When you really start digging into the details, it's fascinating. You see how these human factors play a role, even with, like, all this advanced technology.
Yeah, and it's like everyone remembers the tragedy, of course, but this article, like, really pulls back the curtain on OceanGate, what was actually going on there. Like, they have this, like, really detailed timeline of the Titan's, like, final moments, and it's chilling.
It's all based on testimony and evidence from this Coast Guard hearing, too.
It's crazy. Like, they send this message, it's 10:14 a.m., just a few minutes before they lose contact, and it just says, all good here.
Knowing what we know now, right?
Yeah, it's eerie.
It is, and it makes the message they sent at 10:47 just seconds, like literally 6 seconds before that final ping, so unsettling.
What did it say?
Dropped 2 REITs. They jettisoned 2 weights.
So they knew something was wrong.
It seems that way, right? Like in those final seconds, they were trying to surface.
Oh, I can't even imagine just being stuck down there, thousands of feet underwater, in the dark, and realizing something's wrong.
And then, the debris was found hundreds of yards from the Titanic on the ocean floor. This wasn't a case of it getting snagged or lost. This was a catastrophic implosion at depth.
And they were trying to surface. Like, the article even mentions this lawsuit, I think it was from one of the victims' families, suggesting they were trying to abort the mission at that point.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible, but without more information, it's impossible to know for sure what was happening inside that submersible during those final moments.
Right. But here's where I think it gets, like, really interesting and kind of disturbing. The article really gets into this testimony from David Lockridge. He was their director of marine operations at OceanGate.
Yeah, Lockridge. His testimony is really important to understanding what led up to this.
He basically claims OceanGate, it was all about the profits. Like, safety, rigorous science, that wasn't the focus.
Yeah, he basically said he felt like the company was prioritizing, making money over safety and rigorous scientific exploration.
He called it all smoke and mirrors.
And himself, a show pony, there to make the company look good, but not there to actually ensure safety.
Wow. And he had concerns, I mean, real concerns, going as far back as 2018.
Yeah, so years before the tragedy.
What kind of concerns?
He's on record saying that he had no confidence whatsoever in the Titan's construction, specifically called out the viewport. That's, for anyone who's not familiar with submersibles, the acrylic window. It lets the passengers see out.
Okay.
Lockridge claims that it wasn't certified for the depths they were aiming for these expeditions.
They were diving deeper than what that window was made for.
That's what he claimed, yeah. He flagged it as a major safety risk.
And what happened? They just ignored him?
They did. According to the article, OceanGate, especially the CEO, Stockton Rush, they mostly ignored these concerns.
So he's saying this years before, and they ignored him?
Yeah, pretty much. And it gets worse. The article says that he, Lockridge, was actually fired after repeatedly, voicing these concerns.
They fired him for that.
Makes you wonder about their priorities, right? It wasn't just an oversight. This was like ignoring safety, especially when you consider the guy in charge, Stockton Rush.
Yeah, the article makes it seem like he, Stockton Rush, was really driven, like this vision he had, making deep-sea exploration accessible. But was he blind to the risks?
He described by some as, quote, gung-ho, someone who was definitely pushing boundaries, maybe at the expense of safety.
And these weren't just warnings about, like, oh, the tech might fail. This was, like, people could die. The article, I think it's from Lockridge's exit interview, actually. He tells Rush straight up, if something goes wrong at those depths, it's the crew, the support team, who are left to deal with it.
Which is, knowing what we know now, knowing Rush was piloting the Titan, it adds another layer to this whole thing. It wasn't just a leader sending others into danger. He was right there with them.
Right. It's easy to focus on the big picture, the CEO of the company.
Right.
But this article, it highlights these specific incidents, these past dives that, I don't know, they really show this, like, disregard for safety.
Yeah, and they show a pattern at OceanGate of downplaying risks, and these incidents, some of them, like right before the implosion.
Like, there's this crew member, Stephen Ross. He talks about this dive. It was days before the implosion, and something malfunctioned. This platform, and it caused everyone inside to slam into the back of the submersible.
Oh, wow.
They were stuck like that for an hour.
An hour. Stuck. Thousands of feet underwater. You'd think that would be a wake-up call. Like, time to reevaluate everything.
Right. But that doesn't seem to be the case. Ross mentions another dive, 2022. They heard this loud bang while they were coming up. And then, get this, another one, the controls were reversed at the bottom of the ocean because of a thruster malfunction.
Are you serious? The controls were reversed thousands of feet down.
Yeah. And it wasn't just him. The article talks about this crash. Back in 2016, there were conflicting accounts about it. Lockridge, he describes it as a near miss. Says Rush panicked and hit the Andrea Doria wreckage. But another crew member, Renato Rojas, she says, no big deal, denies any panic, downplays it.
That's what's so scary, right? It's not just that these incidents happened. It's that they were covered up, or at least downplayed. That lack of transparency, that's a major red flag.
Yeah, it creates this environment where you can't even talk about potential problems honestly, which, when you're doing what they were doing, is terrifying.
You need transparency in these extreme environments. You need to be able to admit mistakes, to learn from them, and it doesn't sound like that was happening.
It's heartbreaking. You know, we've been talking about these malfunctions, all these near misses.
Yeah.
It's easy to get lost in the details, but
Okay.
it's bigger than just the submersible, right? It makes you think about, like, the ethics of pushing boundaries, exploration.
Definitely. It really forces you to think about how we balance this human desire to explore with, like, keeping people safe. It's something that we're going to keep grappling with. This isn't going away.
Especially now, it feels like everyone's trying to push limits, break records.
Yeah.
Like, where do you even draw the line? What's it all for,
Right. And think about this. The technology exists to explore the deep ocean safely. Like, they already have these traditional submersibles. Tried and true could have made that same trip. Probably way less risk.
That's what gets me. Like, if that technology exists, why even bother with the Titan? Why take those risks? Was it all just ego?
It's probably a bunch of things. I mean, innovation always has some risk, right? There's always this drive to be first, to do things differently. And there are some fields, like I'm thinking aerospace, where pushing those boundaries, it comes with the territory,
Yeah, but there's a difference between, like, getting in an experimental rocket yourself and selling tickets for other people to come along.
Exactly. And that's where the ethics come in. When it's not just your life you're risking, you need those safety regulations, independent oversight. You need to be completely transparent.
Makes you wonder how we stop this from happening again, because people are going to keep exploring. The ocean's right there.
And we should keep exploring. That's part of being human. But we got to learn from this, from these investigations, these stories that we're talking about. All these details, they're horrible, but they happen, and we need to learn.
So what do we do? How do we move forward from this?
This whole thing, it just shows how important a few things are. One, admitting mistakes is enough. We have to learn from them. Two, we have to demand transparency, and not just from companies like OceanGate, from anyone doing this kind of exploration. And finally, we have to remember that safety is more important than anything else, more than some new invention, more than profits.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think as we wrap up this deep dive, one question sticks with me. How do we explore responsibly, especially in a world obsessed with pushing the limits? How do we make safety the foundation, not an afterthought? It's a lot to think about. This has been tough, but really important. Thanks for diving into this with me.